Just because this property is a great bedding property doesn't mean you can't draw them in with a food plot of your own.
It's hot outside. It's like 85 today.
Yeah, but it's a strange year.
Isn't it?
Oh my God. The amount of rain we got, I was just telling Dan, literally the river is at spring levels. I mean, like, it is that high. It's amazing. And it's going to change up what we're going to do this fall for sure. I can't even get the tractor to my food plots. And if I did, I'd have to take it in by ferry because there's standing water that we have to get through to get the tractor to where it's got to go.
Have you planted anything yet?
No, but I'm not giving up, right? So as a food plotter, you got to figure out what you're going to do because I need the food come fall to hold my deer, especially this year. Man, we got a ton of up and comers that lived last fall, so I'm excited about it. There's a ton of 3 and 4 year olds, and if I don't have the food, they're not going to stay on my place. So here's what we're going to do. We got access to go in with the UTV around through the neighbors, which I had to call and ask permission, which they're going to let us. So we're going to spray the food plots, and then we're going to wait and see here in the next week or two if it doesn't dry out where we can get a tractor back there. We're just going to seed, and then I'm taking the Argo, and we're going to roll over all the standing vegetation, which is literally 4 feet tall.
It's chest high. You're rolling that first and then seeding?
No, I'm going to seed it first so that the seed gets all the way down to the ground. And then we'll roll it. We'll probably use an Argo if it's that wet, right? Just because the Argo, no matter how wet it is, we can get through to it. And where my plots are, it's going to be a little bit drier, but the Argo is so low to the ground, it's going to flatten that grass down. So my seed's going to have great contact.
First of all, how many acres of plots do you guys have?
So normally we plant about 20. This year, with the conditions the way they are, I'll be happy to get 7 or 8 of it in.
Oh my gosh,
not even half. Not even half, yeah. And we're not going to worry about the rest. I'm just really worried about my bigger kill plots off the bedding areas.
So what's in those plots now? That's kind of what I'm getting at.
So what was in there before was a mixture, like that of your rape, and then we had a lot of cereal grains in there. So it should have been all nice winter wheat and winter rye that normally this time of year you just go in. It would have already been mature, or it already been you can kill it easy with just a regular herbicide rather than Roundup, which I hate using Roundup all the time. But this year what happened, it got so wet that the only thing that really grew in the spring and throughout the summer is reed canary grass.
Oh.
And if you guys are familiar with it, it's it grows 3-4 feet tall, it heads out, and if you've ever had it on your place, there's thousands of seeds in the ground. So every time you work it up, if your seed doesn't germinate right away, reed canary grass is going to come up. So what we're going to use that reed canary grass as our cover, right? So we're going to spray it with Roundup. We'll get in there. If I can't get the UTV in there, we'll spray with the Argo. I'll rig up the Argo so that it can hold our ATV sprayer and go in there, and we'll spray all the food plots that are next to those bedding areas and kill it. And then at the end of July, we'll probably seed, which we'll use a combination of brassicas. I like purple top turnips. Any of this stuff in a lot of these blends is going to be fantastic. But then we'll also put some of that early season attract in either winter peas they love, right? Oats, buckforage oats, any of that cocker oats they call them.
And you're putting that in and then crimping over the top of it.
Yeah, and then we're going to drive over, and lay down that dead grass so it forms a mat. And it'll do 2 things. What I'm really worried about is right now we're so wet, but if you looked at the long-term forecast, it's really supposed to be dry. So by not tilling or not doing any of that, it's going to hold the moisture in the ground longer. My seeds are going to germinate. And once they get through that mat, right, they'll just take off. And then the roots are all staying nice and moisture because they don't get the direct sun like that. Yep. So it should be a winning combination. I know a lot of people are worried, that the drought hits. But once August hits, it cools down enough at night and then warms up enough during the day that you get that condensation from the plants. The plants will form their own moisture from the air.
With that canary grass, what's important is you kill it first.
You got to kill it, yes.
Some of the stuff you don't have to, and that's why I was asking, because like some remnant food plot stuff.
Yeah, we got it. The PH is one of the sponsors, right, for some of our stuff, and they got a great crimper. And if that would have been all winter wheat or winter rye, all we have to do...
You could have just ran it over.
Run it over as fast as a tractor will drive. It kills it all instantly. It forms that mat that you wanted it to form anyway.
I've seen juries do this.
Yeah, It is the
Don
way to
Higgins
go.
did it.
Unfortunately for me, rather than be quick down and dirty food plots, which we normally can do, we're going to put some time and a lot of sweat labor is going to go into it.
Which is going to help. So they're killing it first.
Yep.
Then seeding it.
Then seeding.
Then seeding it, and then running it over, crimping it, which
Yep.
which actually is almost like fertilizer and a moisture
exactly.
kind of sponge.
Deer and Deer Hunting Properties is brought to you by Orion Hunting Products, America's #1 modular deer blind. Deer and Deer Hunting Properties is brought to you by the all-new Feed Hub by Moultrie Mobile.
You mentioned the weather. They're saying north of the 35th parallel, so that's going to include almost all of us. I mean, now if you're in Alabama or Mississippi or Louisiana, different story for you guys. But if you're Tennessee or Indiana or Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, they're saying basically August, September, October is going to be unprecedented heat.
If you think about it, think about last fall. I planted my stuff this time of year. We got a rain in late July. It all germinated, and then August, nothing with rain, and all my seed was really small, and it just crumpled in the sun. I mean, it did not make it. So we had to reseed, which at the end of August, and I was like, oh, we're not going to end up with anything, right? And then boom, we have one of the warmest falls on record for us, and we had great turnips. We had great everything. My food plots look fantastic.
So if you don't have that luxury of reseeding, what would you say, Brad? What would you recommend holding off for a couple weeks yet?
Yeah, I would probably hold off if I'm worried about money, right? Seed's expensive. I'm going to wait till the weather gets in a more stable pattern, because right now it's not stable whatsoever. We're going from 90 degrees, and today's perfect, right? 80 with no rain. But a lot of times with these storms are flashing up, that if you get hit by some of these cells, it'll wash a lot of your seed right away if you have any kind of slant.
So be very mindful of your seed bed and how deep you're planting. Make sure you're actually getting it into the ground.
For sure.
I think most people, if we're going to make a broad brush here, I'd say most people are going to be safe mid to late August, which sounds just so late.
For us, right? We're out of Wisconsin, so you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And we're in central Wisconsin. A lot of years we'll have that early frost, right? We'll have a frost by the third week in September. So that's why we get our stuff in a little bit earlier. Last year we didn't get our first frost till mid-October, and that was a real mild one, and it was late October by the time we had that hard
is a
frost.
risk that you're going to run. You're going to run the risk of if you plant. I don't think it's too late to. I think we're to the game where it's like if you haven't planted already, you're not too early.
Normally we plant enough, right, in my place, because we plant so many acres, that we'll plant some early, and then we'll go in a couple weeks later. So literally we don't have to worry about it, because no matter where it is, we hit the sweet spot with some of our plots. We're going to have food. But this year it's not quite that way, because like I said, normally our plots, a couple of them would be ready to go, and we didn't even spray them yet. So we're behind the 8 ball. I'm feeling the crunch. Season starts early, so it's going to be interesting fall.
So what do you think about this, Brad? This is one of our TV sponsors, Rack Fuel. I'm really impressed with the Showtime, and I'm just going to tell you guys, I'm not going to even talk about the product so much, but what's in it. My place, I've got a very small property and some small food plots and a couple logging roads, and you don't get a lot of sunlight. So I found out what was in this stuff. There's 4 seeds. It's plantain, burnet, small burnet, chicory, and alfalfa. And I asked the guy at the co-op, actually, I said, if I had, he goes, those are actually 4. I just said the seeds.
Forges, yeah.
And he said, well, number 1, they're all perennials. And number 2, they do pretty well with shade.
And deep roots, right? I mean, that's the key.
If you're dealing with a drought situation, it's probably a pretty good blend to have.
Yeah, and I planted small burnet before, and the deer absolutely loved it, and it was in one of those shady areas. I don't know why I never went back to it, but it was one of those areas that the deer absolutely
You just
pounded.
don't see it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's if you guys are wondering, it's not a brassica per se. It's got like jagged little leaves that are in a circle.
This kind of reminds me of a jagged clover,
but big.
But big.
Big leaves about. It's like if you put your thumb and forefinger together, they're that big. And then plantain, you know what this is? It's in your lawn. It's those things with the big leaves, with the stems that shoot up straight in the middle.
Yeah.
As a forage, it's high in protein. It's actually like a a natural gut health plant that animals eat. So I think they say deer love it. Didn't know that. I have it all over on my property. And then chicory, most of us know about that. Chicory is, you can't kill it, really.
No.
It's almost worse than the dandelion, but the leaves are much more tender. And then alfalfa, obviously, you plant alfalfa hay, it's best hay you can get. Super high protein.
Yep.
So if you got something like that in a shaded spot or a small plot, and you're worried about this stuff, you're worried about heat, you're worried about no rain, it might be better than planting
Oh, yeah, by far. A quarter acre, a third of an acre, even if it's small, just to hold the deer. What I love about that product especially is you can put it in some of those shaded areas where the deer are going to stage before they come out to your big plot, right? And it's so much easier to hunt over that because rather than 20 deer standing there all night long and now I got to get out of my ladder stand or box blind and they're still in the plot, well, now all those deer are past me, right? And now I'm on this little plot and I can just kind of sneak my way out of it.
It also makes it nice for like a access road.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they will stage or they'll maybe just kind of linger in there coming out. And it's something that nobody wants to sit there and replant.
Deer and Deer Hunting Properties is brought to you by DDH Outdoors.
The other thing is if it does get really dry, right, on a year and it's already been established, right, so it goes green to brown and looks like it's totally dead, those roots below the surface are still getting moisture. They're just not feeding the plant because they know it's kind of useless to do that. So they'll let the tops die off, and then as soon as it gets moisture, boom, it'll pop right back up. That's why you see alfalfa almost every single year come back. Chicory comes back. Your plantains in your lawn come back. It's because it has this sense like, oh, it's a drought. Let's close down and stay alive. And then as soon as you get the moisture, it opens back up and everything greens up. So what I'm going there is if you see your plot get dead for a little while and it's extreme drought, you either got two choices. One, you got to water it or leave it alone. Don't work it back up because it's going to come back to life, so.
And over-tilling is a bad thing too, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, because every time you till the soil, any weed seed that's in that soil comes to the surface or gets high enough that it's going to regerminate, and now you're fighting the weeds again.
What would you say if you had the percentages, perennials versus annuals?
I like, so my favorite is like go-to would be something like this or strictly a clover. We always have about maybe 20% in that. And why I'm not as big as annuals as a lot of people are, especially in the South, is we have so many soybeans around. Like a lot of our farmers around us are cash croppers, right? So they're doing that 50-50 mix every other year. They're switching it over. So the deer literally all summer long have this super high protein, soybean fields. And normally we plant soybeans. Below my house, we'll have a 3-acre field full of soybeans. Those deer have that high protein source, so I like to use clover, kind of like you're talking about, on my logging roads or my paths. Why I like it is because I can keep it mowed. It's a great green source, and honestly, it doesn't grow tall, so during the hunting season, I can walk down those paths without leaving a lot of scent, and therefore, I'm not educating my whitetails.
Do you get picky with your clover selections?
No, as long as it's a white clover, normally it does best, right? That's what the deer like, and it's more palatable, and there's higher protein in it. But some areas, it's harder to grow white, so then you can put reds in. A lot of the stuff literally will start, the reds will almost come naturally if you control the weeds, right? And so if you don't want to spend a lot of money, just control your weeds, and pretty soon you'll have a nice clover field.
Yeah, they'll eat any kind of clover. The difference, if you don't know, white clover is much more palatable. The stems are softer. Deer are going to eat them, and they're going to gravitate to them. And if you want to see the difference, plant a plot half and half, and you're going to find out.
All of them are going to be in that one half. Yeah.
And that red stuff will just find its way. Eventually, it's going to find. Now, I know there's different strains, and this is something I don't know how many. I think there's 4 different strains of white, for the most part, that you can find if you look hard enough. And then there's some proprietary ones, but I would agree with you on that if you can get that established. And the other thing, too, actually, Brad taught me this years ago. You're very seldom, unless you're way better green thumb than I am, you're not going to get clover. You'll get clover, but you're not going to have that lush field overnight. It's going to take a couple seasons.
Yeah,
for that
you know,
to
especially
get
at first
perfected.
year, a lot of people plant their clover in the fall, right, and use it as kind of a cover crop because your brassicas or your winter wheat, it will allow the clover to really establish. In the next year, green up, you're going to have a decent clover field. Some of us, you know, will plant it in the spring, and that's the hardest to get established. But once it's established, and then you can do things, you know, frost seed. And if you guys aren't familiar with frost seeding, all you're doing is looking for weak patches in your clover. And then in March here in Wisconsin, it probably is earlier in Illinois or Iowa, you're just taking your spreader again and spreading over those weaker spots and basically reseeding it. And as that ground freezes, and then during the day it opens back up, those seeds drop into the ground. It's almost like reseeding itself. And it's a great way from taking a clover field that would normally last 5 or 6 years and get 7 or 8 years out of a clover field, because let's face it, clover seed's expensive, right? So if I can minimize my expenses on clover, I'm going to go ahead and do some of that.
Deer and Deer Hunting Properties is brought to you by Spy Point Trail Cameras.
Brad, I want to talk a little bit about approach to early season bow hunting. I know you're still doing a lot of, you're traveling all over the place. You just shot your big
axis deer, yeah. So literally, but for what we started doing here, when July hits, right, most of the racks are getting pretty full potential. This year, with it being so wet, the deer, honestly, they're not on mine. I mean, they're not. My place is just too wet. They're all in the higher ground. So, you know, for us, early season's not going to tell us as much as normal. So it's going to be a lot more in-season scouting. But that's the beauty of your cell cams, right? I mean, you get instant feedback. You know where the deer like to be, you know, and we're going to put our cameras out there and keep our fingers crossed that it dries out enough that all the bucks come back into ours. We do a little bit of scouting via drone so that we can see where the deer are hitting. You know, we're not spooking them or anything, but if we can see some of these hidden bean fields off the road, and I know there's 20 or 30 deer out there, well, now I know, you know, or you can easily tell the buck groups because they're all in velvet, right? And you can easily see them. Pretty awesome.
So that's a property, you know, and I know how you do it. You basically, you've hunted this land your whole life. What about blind placement? I know that you're running a lot of semi-permanent blinds.
Yes.
Do you see differences when you're putting those things out there now and then trying to hunt them in early season?
No, I think they get so used to doing it right now. If we put them out right now, they'll be fine, right? I actually kind of stopped brushing them in this time of year. If I'm going to put even a ground blind, if we knew we were going to hunt out of a ground blind, I'll put it on the edge of a food plot. I might put it underneath an overhanging branch or something. But it seems, to my experience, without hiding it, they might spook. You know, the trail camera shows that they're definitely wary of it for the first couple days, but once they learn there's nothing in there, they'll just walk right by it. And then box blinds, I always thought, you know, some of the more permanent box blinds, you're going to educate your whitetails, you know, if you hunted out of them too much or if you put them on the food plots. But man, we started taking that to a whole different level by creating food plots designed not just to hunt out of box blinds. We started doing the same thing, and the big thing there is making sure you have an exit point where you can get out of that food plot without really scaring a lot of deer. So we put ours like over cricks or in a big clump of brush. When we crawl down, the deer can't see us get out of there.
That's the number one. Entry and exit.
Yeah.
Entry, how are you going to get to that blind or tree stand, and how are you going to get out of there?
Yeah.
In the early season is critical, and not walk across a food plot,
Nice.
not walk across a trail that they're going to. So that's another tip that people can think about. Well, that ran us through an early season primer. I'm all excited to go now.
I am too. I'm ready. I just hope we get to see, you know, the season dry out for us that need it to dry out, and for you guys that need moisture, hopefully you get the rain that you need. I'll be more than willing to give you my share of rain for the next month because we got way too much.
I will never curse the rain, but it's too late to bottle it up and send it out. Send it elsewhere.
Exactly.